Welcome back to the Burning the Red Shirt podcast. I'm your host, Zach Tao, and here with me again is Andrew Katz and Chris K. You guys doing all right?
Good, man. I'm about to try and promote
man.
the show. So
yeah,
Nice.
Let's do this.
I think everything's in its right place in terms
Yeah.
of timing and all that stuff.
I tweeted out the YouTube link, so that's my job. Oh, I should probably retweet it from my personal account, huh?
We got to double up as much as we can, okay?
Yeah, we need all of the following we can get. But anyway, we want to get into a few topics. Obviously, we had the big transfer of Jayden Daniels to LSU. That's kind of the first thing we want to hit on. There's a lot of relevance here, not just college football landscape, like fantasy wise. Does this change your outlook on LSU in any way?
I'm going to let Andrew start with this.
My
I feel like
outlook at
Andrew's got a
LSU,
lot of good things to
Yes.
talk about with this. So I'll let him
I'm
start.
most interested in it right from a fantasy perspective.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. More so fantasy wise.
Okay, cool. Good. Then we're on the same page. It's interesting in the sense that his skill set potentially and presumably nicely matches up with the new OC, right? The new OC was at Cincinnati, kind of molded the offense perfectly to Ritter's strengths. I think Jayden's got arm talent for days. Obviously a willing runner, probably more than anything else as a result of having nothing in the way of offensive weapons that he could actually throw to last year. I mean, his running backs were his best pass catchers. So he was running all the time in that offense. And I think that when he's signing on with LSU, he's doing so thinking that it's going to put me in the SEC, right? So that's going to give me a spotlight, probably get my street cred back to where it needs to be as he looks to probably be 1 year at the LSU program and then move on to the NFL. I think that when he was apparently not doing the dance shoot with Brian Kelly, right? But whatever sort of tactics Brian Kelly took to bring him on board, presumably he aligned with the new OC and kind of sold him on, hey, here's what I did for Ritter. This is what I can do for you. Because I mean, I think a good way of looking at it can be like he's more talented than Ritter, I think, in every single way. And Ritter was a phenom on the fantasy front. So the competition's definitely a step up, but relative to potential destinations, all of which sounded super boring, right? I mean, we were hearing like Cal, Missouri. None of that really does anything for me. This on surface level has its challenges. SEC defenses. Brian Kelly, not known for producing star power at the quarterback position, but I think it could be more interesting if Kelly if he's not overly restrictive, overly micromanaging of his OC, lets that dude mold the offensive game plan around Daniel's strengths. It could be fun.
Yeah, I think I agree with that for the most part. I don't know if it really changes like my outlook 100% on LSU. I think their offense is going to change. I think that was set in stone. I think he's the better talent, I think. Would you agree between him and Brennan? But I guess it's not guaranteed that he wins the job, but I would like to think that he does.
I mean, I don't think I would say, I think it was the analytics Twitter follower or Twitter guy from C2C that said basically like there's no way he transfers there without being locked in as starter. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
You would think, but we've seen it before.
Yes. I mean, in terms of decision making, it would be a very average at best if he did not get that reassurance. But college kids, we've talked about this every single show.
They're geniuses.
They're all idiots. So I think let's just assume he's the starter. I think there's a couple things for me that kind of worry me in a sense. One, what has that OC done to like really do anything with receivers at Cincinnati and beyond? Like Alex Pierce just ran like a crazy 40 with like unbelievable athleticism in like his best season like was comparable to a Michigan receiver. So like, are we that excited about that? And that hurts like Booty, Deion Smith, and some of those guys like Jake Beck, and not that like a receiver 3 in that offense is going to do anything, but like there's like guys that are actual real players for sure. And then I think too, right? Like I think Ritter's a very good comparison, except I actually think Ritter's better. I mean, you look at the numbers that Daniels has put up, and I know I don't have like the extreme advanced analytics to put behind it, but like if you look at his more basic stats, his more like typical stats, they're pretty average. Like they were like a dominant run team with incredible talent running, and he couldn't produce through the air. Like he was a 60% passer with like I think it was 10 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Like, look at you. We're evolving
you're
the
loving
game right
this.
here.
That
You're
was
loving. We
that was
talked
peak
about
Zach.
this, and you're just crushing it. Good for you. I think he has the talent, generally speaking. Am I that like jacked up about his fantasy potential with LSU? Not really. Like he had an awesome contextual run game that should have helped him with passing to be at the very least super efficient. And I'm going to say something real crazy. I'm wearing a Michigan shirt, so it's got to happen.
Ooh, yes, do it.
But if you look at Cade McNamara's stats, they're probably the same, if not better, than Jayden Daniels. If Cade McNamara was transferring to LSU, would we be jacked up about it? No, we wouldn't. So I think it's interesting. Look at you, you're all over it, man. Incredible.
They're actually better. Go on.
They're actually better. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I think it's a great move because like the upside is definitely there. I think if we're going to play this weird game of like, well, if we're going to be excited about Jayden Daniels and this offense with this OC, then we should probably be pretty down on Booty and Deion Smith and their receiving group because you can't have it both ways. This is that whole like, well, the coaching staff does this and that and the other, and I'm totally cool with respecting it, but like you can't say one thing is going to happen and then also the other is going to happen when you're citing a assistant coach that has done the opposite.
Your arguments come around to the point where we're now on the same page. I mean, I'm not pumping up Booty as a result of
no,
thinking that Daniels is going to be that. So I took Daniels in one of the best balls. I leaned into variance and took him while he was still in the portal. I think in like the 19th round, hoping that we're kind of figuring he's going to get a job. It probably can't be worse than last year. It could be amazing. But worst case scenario, I feel like I kind of come out even. Where would you take him now in the drafts that we were doing?
Probably late teens. I probably would take him before like a Jerkovich, who is like I feel like is in that late teens, early 20s. I don't know. It's weird because there's so much talent, and he is a great runner, right? Like you look at his rushing stats. He's getting 5 to 6 points a game rushing, which is awesome. And LSU's offense should be good. They should score a lot of points. If you want to play devil's advocate, you say, well, who has Arizona State's receivers been? They're just a bunch of super athletic guys at best, right? Like, so you throw them with a guy like some Booty, some Deion Smith, some Beck, like I've said, like, you're looking at an offense that should be better. So to play devil's advocate, I can see why you might be a little bit leaning more than the norm for him. But I don't know. I mean, I would have liked – there's not a lot of options right now, right? Like where could he have gone if it wasn't LSU? There's not this late in the game, where could he have gone? This feels like a good option. What's Miles Brennan going to do?
Yeah, it's fine.
That'll be an interesting – Brennan's going to be an interesting – thing too. Does he just sit the year and wait, or does he move on? What does he do?
This is his 6th year.
Well, there's always a 7th,
right? So,
yeah. Well, I still obviously, I think Daniels wins the job. You don't go there without it leaning in your favor. But is it not possible he doesn't win it?
It's possible for sure that he loses the job. Is it likely? I don't think so. I would say it's 85% shot he wins it, right? Like, you can't go there without thinking you're not, like, without being kind of given that unofficial wink, wink, you're winning that.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, but I was just kind of playing the other side.
Well, the other side would be college kids are idiots, which we've talked about.
Like, they didn't even know he was coming. He just showed up.
The Baker move.
Heck, his team at Arizona State didn't even know he was leaving.
Yeah.
So you know.
It's good. It's a great, early March topic. I love it. I appreciate him doing that on a Sunday night before we're going to podcast. I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we'll move on to another transfer that kind of hit the news today. Corey Rucker from Arkansas State hit the portal today. Where do you go as a wide receiver? It's a little easier because you can kind of just slide right into a lineup and make some plays. But realistically, where do you think he ends up?
I have absolutely no idea.
Okay, where would you like him to end up?
I don't even know. The options are endless. My first question is he any good? And I mean that genuinely. Like, he could potentially be a niche receiver at an offense that's awesome, like scheme wise. So my question is he actually any good? I don't know.
Well, according to this, he's a freshman, so he's got some room to grow, right? Like, even if you think he's just average, I feel like going to the right place, getting the right exposure, getting the right coaching.
No, he's not still a freshman. I
think he was a redshirt freshman. Marquise would know. Marquise was on him last year from the jump, and I think he was a second year guy after last year.
Okay, so he's got 5 years.
I think he's a third year guy right now. Like, going into this season, he's a third year guy.
Okay.
So in terms of destinations, though, the CFF site Discord is bumping with conspiracy. So he's from Mississippi, right? So Mississippi schools, if he wants to transfer up, and then let's say he says, "I'm done with Arkansas. I don't want to go back home. Why don't I just go follow my old coach over to Logan, Utah? Go to Utah State and get the priority on those other transfers."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be fun. Like, in terms of, like, I don't know. I drafted him in like one or two spots last year, but I feel like I'm never going to be the high man on him relative to a lot of other people that we draft with. It seems like he does cool stuff. He has some huge games every now and then. If he stayed at Arkansas State, I never would draft him. I'm totally out on that team as being an absolute dumpster fire. Like, year two, any residue of the goodness of Blake Anderson wears off in the Butch Jones transition this year. Like, I'm out. But yeah, if he went to Utah State, okay, I think that would be cool. That would be kind of exciting. If he transfers up there, I feel like that has risk even in a good system, right? He's probably competing against other kids who maybe don't have his experience from a collegiate production perspective, but they're more talented, or at least more stars, right? So I don't know. I probably wouldn't pay the iron price.
Yeah.
I think the issue you run into is that, like, take an Ole Miss receiver 3 or a Mississippi State receiver 3, you throw him in Arkansas State last year. Does he do the same thing as Corey Rucker? Like, and Corey Rucker could be a superstar.
Yeah.
Could be awesome. We just, we're just a year earlier, a year later, whatever you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite game to play with draft prospects. Like, the one that I kept that hit home with me last year was like, well, what would happen if you dropped Justin Fields in at BYU? And it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Like, every bone in my body told me not to be in on Zach Wilson, and then that kind of like sealed the deal.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, right? Like, what do we preach every single offseason? Is follow the OC, follow like the dominant offense,
follow the system.
So,
right?
like, I mean, how many times are we running into players that are just so average at best that are great fantasy options. Like Letty Brown was awesome at West Virginia. And like before he was good, he was a very bad running back. And then he was all of a sudden became a very good running back. He didn't just run like 0.3 of a second faster than his 40. It was like coaching and opportunity. And I'm not saying Rucker falls into that, but I'm with you, Andrew. I'm not going to be on a guy like this because I'm going to just play I'm going to doubt it, and I'm not going to just jump in on this when you could take what does Ja'Cour Pearson do in that offense last year? Mm-hmm. And what did he do at Ole Miss? Like,
man, I love that guy. I wanted
we all do
so bad.
I know. I was so jacked up when he went to Ole Miss. I was like, how did I dislike? He went from oh my God, I just fell into the perfect example. He was at Western Kentucky and was awesome, was he not?
Yeah,
he wasn't like
going
superstar,
into last year. He had the most
awesome.
Catches in I think going into last year he had the most catches of returning production across your collegiate career. Going into last year.
Yeah, so he was awesome, and then he went to Ole Miss. What did he do last year? Is that you got the screen sharing? Let's go. Come on. I'm just kidding. On. He was non-existent, and I'm not saying that's Rucker, but I am. You're so quick on it. I appreciate you, man. I am just weary. I'm not paying high-end capital to get Rucker like people are going to, and especially if he goes to somewhere that's cool, right? So I don't know. I hope I'm wrong because, obviously, generally, I want everybody to be amazing and awesome because that makes college fantasy football better. But this feels like a situation where you guys can have it. I'll just sit back and not have any exposure to that.
Yeah, I think it's really going to be determined by where he goes. I would like to think he's going to go somewhere where he's going to be utilized more than he was at Arkansas State, which is hard to say because he was their leading receiver. But if you go to a place where he's going to get 90 balls thrown his way, 90 to 100 balls, that's something that would be really intriguing fantasy-wise.
What do you think his end game is? I think his end game determines where he goes. Well, is he just trying to follow a coach, or is he trying to go to the NFL? Because if it's one, I think it's Utah State.
Well, I think every
scheme type thing.
NFL, right? That's the end game.
But right. But I think some guys are I go to the portal because I'm following a coach or a system. Whereas I think the Ole Miss Mississippi State ties, based on location and where he's from, that Andrew was saying, is a different fit, but also very intriguing.
Yeah, that's.
Did you have a school in mind when you asked that question yourself, or what did you think?
Oh, for me, no, I don't have a school in mind.
It's so fresh. It was an hour ago, right?
Yeah.
It's just impossible for us to we don't know if it's push versus pull, right? Is he getting pulled into the portal by texts that he's exchanging with other coaches from other schools, or is he pushing himself into the portal because, hey, let's test the waters, let's see what's good. It sucked being at Arkansas State. They can't even decide on a quarterback every single year, right? And now my cool pass happy offense is gone, and things kind of started to go downhill, even more downhill last year. And I mean, I don't know. I don't really see much optimism in Jonesboro personally.
Oh no. Ole Miss sounds cool, right? That would be.
I think both of them sound awesome.
Yeah, Mississippi State sounds great too. But I don't know. Utah State. I don't hope he does go to Utah State because that's Boise's got to play him. So I'd rather him not go there. But fantasy wise, I think that'd be okay. San Jose State would be kind of cool, but they're kind of loaded at receiver.
Yeah, we're good. We're good there.
So, question: who's got the better receiving group? San Jose State, SMU, or Alabama?
I mean, San Jose State's only got two dudes. They're like my boys. So I can't rank them too high, right? SMU or Alabama, though, you got to go with SMU, right? I mean, they go 6 deep, no problem. And Mike keeps drafting that guy, Roderick Daniels. I don't know how you get that guy above 7th on your board when you go, I guess maybe 6th, because they have Rasheed, they have Moore, they have Corrales, they have the guys that should actually be the starters, Curley and Goffney, who are probably going to be benched, right? Because they didn't transfer in with the new coach.
About Curley.
And then I feel like I'm forgetting someone, but maybe not.
I forgot Bo Corrales went there.
Yeah,
I don't trust that man. That guy had a random injury and was gone for 2 years.
Yeah,
so,
the reason we can't trust him is why we can't trust him to be irrelevant.
So, but that's a great group.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But yeah, I'd say SMU if you're asking me.
SMU, San Jose State, Bama. I'm glad that we could put that on.
Yeah, we're all aligned.
All right, cool. But now, what if Addison went to Bama? It changes, right?
I think Bama goes number one, just top end talent. Addison's one of the best 3 receivers in college football. And then I think Jermaine Burton's got skill set plus opportunity. That's at number 2. I think you just recognize the high end talent. You just go there.
In our best balls, have you noticed that I think 4 Bama receivers generally go in the top 10 to 12 to 15 rounds at the latest, right? Yeah. It's Burton, it's Brooks, Early, and Hall. Hall doesn't always go that high, but he does a decent amount of the time. That feels insane to me.
I just don't buy Early.
Yeah.
I just think he is so likely to just be Slade Bolden that in a situation where there's so many questions, I'd rather just avoid. And it's crazy because we've talked about how Bryce Young is going to make his money only passing, and he will make his money doing that. You would think there would be you have to consider 2 to 3 guys. And I think Burton is the guy for sure. And then Ja'Cory Brooks was awesome, in the limited action where he became more relevant due to injury. Yeah. I just have a hard time saying it's Early. I don't know. And I'm not impressed with Ajayi Hall or whatever. I just don't know.
I was happy for Hall that he got on the field in the Natty and made a couple catches, even though he had he got ripped apart for I think a big drop and then maybe running a bad route or something. But the dude clearly struggled through a lot of stuff on and off the field his freshman year, right? And I don't know. It was nice to see him actually get on the field and make a couple plays in the Natty, in a losing effort, of course. I mean, we're all Bulldogs, but
I know you guys probably.
I'm rooting for him, even though I probably won't be I won't be drafting him at all at top 15 round equity, but
for sure.
Now, you guys probably didn't listen to the CFB Dynasty podcast. I was on the other. I didn't think so. So we talked about Alabama receivers, and you remember Saban coming out basically and saying that he had called these receivers out. They didn't take advantage of the opportunity they were given, blah, blah, blah. It was kind of a shot at him, but it was also at the same time, he knows what he's doing and he's going to get the best out of the guys he's got. I'm more convinced now that they don't get the portal again, and they already have the 2 or 3 guys that are going to step in this year. I know we've talked about who's gonna be the Mechie to Burton, to Williams, and everything, but I think it's somebody that we already have seen on their roster that's going to be playing a more prominent role. I'm gonna lean Brooks.
Yeah, Brooks looks really sweet. He saved their season against Auburn and then continued to show out into a big game against the UGA in the SEC championship, right? A couple of nice plays against Cincy. I feel like he didn't do much in the Natty, but I mean,
I think he had I think it was 3 for 40 and a touchdown max. Maybe not the touchdown.
He didn't really do much at all. I mean, he had the one big catch to save their season, like you said, but he only had 2 catches in the whole game.
Well, he didn't get on the field until Jameson went out, right?
He had 15 catches, and they were all in the last 6 games.
Well,
I think we've seen enough.
I'm not knocking him.
Here's my question, or here's my pointer thought. Years ago, before all these superstar Waddle, Judy, types, Ruggs, all those guys. It used to be one extremely dominant Alabama receiver for 50% of everything. Targets, touchdowns, yards, and everybody else was like a 20 catches max. Isn't it possible that we see that this year and they hammer the run a little bit with Gibbs? Not to mention he's also great in the passing game. So is there not a world where we see Burton or Brooks, let's just say one of the two, becomes this superstar, 50%, 43% of target share and all that type of stuff, and everybody else is just kind of whatever, gets a mix of 3 catches a game?
Yeah, that was definitely something I brought up too. Is like what keeps them from just saying we're going to run the ball now? I mean,
Gibbs is awesome.
So I'm saying they've got the talent. Like, why they could decide tomorrow that, hey, you know what, we're going to go back to just running the ball and having the one big receiver over the top. Like, that's
yeah. And the other thing with that is that, like, think about the quarterbacks they had too. They weren't like obviously as good as Bryce Young, but they were not runners. It wasn't like it was Jalen Hurts offenses that produced this. They were like real quarterbacks that they just decided, well, we're going to throw it to one guy and then mix in a little bit of everything else. I don't think it's the most likely outcome, but I think that it's very possible.
Yeah, it's fair. I think the most likely outcome is Burton and Brooks dominate target share amongst the receivers. The only thing I'm really scared about, that as like something that I'm trying to, that I'm not necessarily considering as being ultra likely, but I feel like it could blow up in my face, is like, what if Early absolutely pops? Like, I like, he gets Waddle comps, right? Like, that's the way people talk about him. And then he got on the field super early, got banged up last year. And like, that's why he's getting drafted so early, because the way people talk about him and think about him, and even though it didn't manifest last year, outside of like, I think one big game early in the year against some dud school, it's the possibility is there that he just lights stat sheets on fire, right, and goes nuclear.
No, it's possible. That's just, I would probably say that's probably more likely than a one-man show type.
Yeah,
that Early kind of becomes the guy, or at least the receiver too. But
we definitely steered that to Alabama receivers somehow, but that's what we do.
I think that's my fault, because I made that half-hearted joke about San Jose State receivers.
No, it was me.
It circles
the
back
there that if Addison went, that was me. It was me.
We're just going to will that into existence.
Yep. So we're going to move to the topic that we kind of want to talk about the NCAA proposing rule changes for college football. Most of them I don't think we really agree with. Is there any particular rule, Andrew? I know you were the one who kind of brought it up earlier this week or last few days. Like, was there one in particular that you wanted to kind of go over?
Yeah, this would be so much better for everyone who's a part of our viewership, all 4 or 5 of the people, if I'd actually spent the time to like intelligibly gather my thoughts and put pen to paper, or at least bullet some stuff out. But in true burning the red shirt fashion, it did not occur. But the whole idea of changing the rules to run clock on incompletions bothers me, like, at my core. I think it's just like it bothers me for lots of reasons. First of all, the only material segments of the population that are calling for this are journalists who want to go to bed early, and it's people who have monetary gains to be made from the ability to spin the story that by shortening games, we are making play safer. And if we are making play safer and we're playing less games, less time on the field, we can then make an argument that play has been made safer. So we can now expand the playoff, because we're not making these players play 18, 19 games from an historical perspective, how long the game has historically been played. We've shortened the game, so the additional games isn't as consequential. And it disgusts me, because you're compromising the quality of the product on the field that people that actually watch the game and enjoy the game are going to now are going to be a part of. You're making it a worse experience, and it's all just to line pockets, of course. I mean, it's not. It's like it's so easily seen through. Like it's just it's disgusting. I think that the reason that it didn't pass this year is because the expanded playoff got voted down, and it will pass when the next time that comes up, and there will be I don't know. I haven't read enough about like what bodies, what people are in which rooms and decide which things, but I assume when the playoff was voted down to expand, like that kind of killed that, because there's no need for that, right? There's no tit for tat anymore. But the next time that comes up, I bet we'll kind of see that see that rule change pushed through, and then we'll see the playoff kind of expanded, or the justification for expanded playoff. We'll be able to check off, hey, the game has been made safer, the games have been made shorter, and now like we paved the way for expanding the playoff, for adding a couple more games, which is just, it's gross, it's disgusting. Like with baseball, like the arguments are kind of similar in some ways, right?
Yep.
In the sense that for baseball, it's like, okay, let's shorten the game because it's not like a great viewer experience, which is just total garbage for college football. The reason college football games are longer is because everyone's scoring, and that's fun. It's fun to watch that. It's fun to watch guys throw all over the place. Baseball has gotten more boring over time as the games have gotten longer because pitching changes around the clock. These guys, I get the idea of like how the counts are being worked longer and stuff like that. I don't buy into all of the narrative surrounding baseball games being less enjoyable than they used to be, but I totally get it. And I think in a lot of ways, like some rule changes there are done with the actual interest, or being discussed in the interest of actually making the games more enjoyable. Here, it's just a money grab.
Yeah, that's a great point. I wanted to bring up baseball because I think there's a huge difference between what these new rules are, like proposed rules, are trying to do, or like what they think they're trying to do. So with baseball, the problem with baseball is there's so many like minutes wasted on a pitcher off the mound or a batter just walking around doing his Velcro on his gloves. Nobody wants to see that. I played baseball. Like, I don't want to see that. Like, there's nothing fun about that. What college football is doing, if they were to put this new rule in place, is not get rid of dead time. They're getting rid of actual action. So they're not accomplishing what they're trying to accomplish. Like, it's not that the game is too long because nobody wants to sit around for 3.5 hours or 3 hours. It's that nobody wants to watch just dead time, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with baseball. I think anybody that says, give me something exciting, I'll watch it for 10 hours, right? Like, no one's saying no to a 7 overtime game unless it's Illinois with the 2-point conversions, then nobody wants that.
Right.
If you give me a 7 overtime game, like, I'm watching every second of that because there's so much action. But when you start taking away the action and you're saving time by reducing plays, it helps nobody. Baseball they're doing so much wrong. Much wrong. And that's not the point of our podcast. We're not getting into that. But they need to be focusing on rules that limit this in-between dead time. And there's been a lot of cool like studies and stuff that have shown how much time you can save. Man, making a game go from 3:15 to 2:45 in baseball would be awesome, getting rid of this stuff. But the interesting thing is with the shifts, getting rid of shifts in baseball, is there's so much negative reaction to it, and I get it. But I actually don't immediately hate it because it's promoting action. It's promoting scoring and offense, which is what people want to see. Nobody likes a 1-0 game in baseball until it's like a no-hitter in the 8th, right?
Or
like
a playoff game, I'm fine with.
Or a playoff game, right? So, like, that stuff's fun at the end. It's not fun in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th inning.
Yeah.
So, to circle it all back, it makes absolutely no sense to just be like, you know what, an incomplete pass means the ball gets reclocked and started again at a certain point. That makes no sense. You're reducing plays, which nobody wants. Everybody loved Oregon because they played 100 plays or whatever, and it was awesome. But now they're going to get rid of that, and nobody wants that. We want a better, tighter game in terms of timing, but that's not the way to do it.
Well, isn't the most logical thing to not stop clocks on first downs like the NFL does? Like that
Probably.
prolongs the game, right? Like, I mean, that's a simple adjustment that can be made. But I think kind of goes back to Andrew's point, lining somebody's pockets. What about these 15 TV timeouts for these nationally televised games?
Oh man, I used to curse out that red hat man at the Auburn games all the time.
Yeah.
And they make no sense. Sometimes it's 3.5 minutes, and I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, the TV timeout, like that's just for their sponsors to get their airtime so they can get paid. Like we all know what that means, but like if you were truly about making the game or speeding up the game, you would limit that because you've got so much dead time, like you were talking about, just in TV timeouts. Like if even like an NBA game, you ever go to like a nationally televised NBA game, like there's the guy on the court that's got the he's the TV timeout guy, and basketball's got all these timeouts anyway. So then they throw an extra like 3 TV timeouts in there, and it just gets to the point where the game just drags on and on. I know it's not a basketball podcast, but it all kind of ties in together, like
the general concept.
Yeah, like in college football, you want to speed the game up. Like that's not the way to do it. Like the incomplete passes. No, I don't like it.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, right? Like people talk about declining attendance for college football games. There's every reason in the world for me to not want to go to a college football game. I got fantasy lineups I'm trying to build. I love watching 100 games at once. So when I go to these games and I got this red hat guy ruining my life by sitting, I swear some of these times it feels like forever. And it feels like every other play, I'm just getting stopped. So just limit it or shorten it, and your in-stadium experience will also then be better.
Yeah, but I think it's also, there's a lot of things I think that play into that, like cost of going to a game versus watching it.
That's a much deeper conversation for sure.
I'm just saying, but like, it is. I won't go deep into this one, but like
you're not wrong. That what I just said does not solve the attendance issue by any means.
I had this discussion not that long ago with somebody. I said, why would I want to go to a game, like a game that doesn't mean much to me? I'd just be going for fun, I guess. But like I can watch the game on my TV on my couch in high def 4K,
better views, better replays
than I would have in the stadium.
Yeah. College football is an atmosphere; it's an experience. So, like you're paying for the tailgate and the experience. So, unless you're just so invested in the team, you cannot be an innocent bystander that loves college football that will just go to a random college football game because there's just too much other stuff going on that is appreciated and loved. To then just be like, yeah, I'll go to this random game instead.
Yeah. Another rule that I saw that I thought was interesting is the targeting, the second half targeting calls. Did you happen to read this?
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay, I did not. Someone hit me with that.
So basically, I'll read it. It says, if a team believes a targeting call was erroneous, its conference would be allowed to submit a request to Steve Shaw, the NCAA's national coordinator of officials, for review. If it's obvious the player was incorrectly penalized, the call would be overturned and the player would be cleared for the first half of the next game. That's great, except he shouldn't have been thrown out in the first place.
So he's getting thrown out. He just doesn't miss the first half of that.
Which I think is a joke anyway, but that's a whole other discussion. Like I feel like, I don't know if we've had this discussion before, but I equate it to like either the NBA's flagrant 1, flagrant 2 type situation, or a soccer's yellow card, red card situation. Like when you have a foul that is egregious, where he's headhunting, he's trying to kill the guy, right? Like, okay, toss him. But if it was a bang bang play, and he got him a little high, but it wasn't like he was going to like for the kill shot. It just kind of happened. And you can see that in review. Just say, look, don't do it again or you're gone.
No, it's the jacked up segment. We got to bring it back.
Isn't that great that we had the jacked up segment?
It's amazing, dude. Not that long
ago. And it was
ago,
loved, right? And everybody was like, you can't miss it. And now all of a sudden it's like Complete faux pas.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't talk about it anymore.
Yeah,
Unless you're on BTR, you know.
I feel like people like tossing these kids. My biggest argument for like targeting or against targeting, I should say, is they don't toss the guys in the NFL for these hits. So why are we tossing college kids for these hits? That's what I don't understand.
Well, they're trying to. I mean, it's not healthy whether you do it at any.
I get that.
I think what they're trying to do is try to limit it. Hey, if we put in better standards and promote better. I'm not. Look, I get the targeting penalty. I love the targeting penalty for the most part, but I think that I'm with everybody else here that like some of it's just ridiculous that you can get thrown out of a game
Like
for something that's like it's football is a sport of literal inches and milliseconds, and guys are tackling guys reactionary,
right?
And they're getting thrown out for it. And then there's guys that are just straight head hunting, just going for the kill, and it's the same penalty, and it makes no sense.
Review, like when you watch a replay, you see the guy. He's just like he's not even looking for that ball. He's going straight at the guy's head. Like that's a clear, obvious targeting. But when a guy comes across the middle and the defender's going for the ball and he happens to like collide into the guy in the head, like then they're going to toss him.
You know, the problem with this rule that you said is you said one word that stood out: obvious. There's never going to be a consensus obvious. It is going to be just with everything. It's going to be like everything else. This seems so obvious that it's this, and it's not. Yeah. Oh, this replay shows this. Oh no, this is what they call it instead. So I think that rule's idiotic. There's no way they're going to give a fair way to do that. I feel like Andrew's holding back on us with some really good.
I mean, my only take is here. Now like Saban and Alabama can bribe the officiating post game and like get their player back and get that overturned. But I don't know. I've never felt that strongly about it. It's not something that I'm gonna get that wound up on because.
Yeah,
I mean, it sucks when a player on your team gets thrown out, or like if a fancy relevant player that you have gets thrown out. But outside of that, like I'm at the point in my life where I just don't care about things outside of those two spheres, right? Like if it doesn't affect Georgia and it doesn't affect my fantasy teams, it's just not that interesting to me.
You know what?
So
breaking news: we're going to IDP this year, so it will affect your team moving forward.
What's crazy is I was at that Auburn Alabama game where Jamison Williams got kicked out for targeting, and I was like, "Holy shit, what?"
Yeah,
like who was that? And then it was like, "Oh my god, like this is incredible." So basically, what Andrew is saying is that like Kirby Smart's not an idiot and doesn't throw James Cook on the punt team.
Dude,
so we don't have to worry about it.
That is like one of my favorite things to rant incessantly about. I don't understand what across the board, all these top coaches put their best receivers as gunners. Like Olave is known as an amazing gunner for Ohio State. DK Metcalf's college career ended because he got a neck injury as a gunner. Like what are I don't understand. Like you have 80 some odd scholarships. You can't find someone else to run down.
I think you got to blame Frank Beamer for that. I think you got to circle it all back. Because Frank Beamer was the special teams guy that said he was essentially the first guy that said, I'm putting my best athletes and players on special teams. That's why he consistently like led the country in all this time period in the span of time with punt blocks and field goal blocks and stuff like that. You look at all in that he wasn't well. First of all, Virginia Tech never had they had some amazing receivers for sure, but like gunners were like defensive backs, like your stud corners that all they had D'Angelo Hall and all those guys, right? But yeah, it makes no sense. Why would you're Georgia, you're recruiting. I mean, didn't Zamir White tear an ACL on a punt team or something? What running back tore an ACL on a punt team one off season?
I forget, dude.
Every
stuff happens all the times. It's just
it was like
it's just cost benefit analysis. Like
Andrew says, recruit some other peasants to go out there and do that grunt
Take your
work.
4 stars and make them do it. You don't
Yeah.
need your 5 stars there.
Yeah.
Yeah, do the grunt work of special teams.
Yeah.
So, was there any other rule change that you thought that was?
I don't really get why there wasn't alignment on the fake injuries stuff. Like the proposal of just, or I don't know if it actually got brought to the table of the suits discussing it, but the idea that, okay, if you go down with an injury, you can't come back into the next drive. Doesn't that solve so many problems?
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't address every single, like cross every T, dot every I. Like I feel like that gets us at least 80% of the way there. Like why is that controversial? Why is that not the easiest thing to implement?
Who are your fall guys?
What's up?
You know, who are your fall guys? Who, you know, what was that receiver's name? Chris Carter, right? You got to have a fall guy. Every time I see these issues with like fake injuries, it's with like it's like a defensive tackle, a nickel corner. Like, I get it, and I think that's better than what there's currently in place in terms of you have to sit out the drive. But like, they're picking these fall guys out on purpose. Like, you're not picking your JJ Watt on defensive end, edge rusher to be the fall guy for a play, right? So I don't know. I think the problem with the fake injury stuff is it's got to be so hard to determine one versus the other. So
it comes back to your clear and obvious thing. Like, how do you prove that he's not really hurt versus he's got a cramp? Like, how do you tell him? How do you tell him he doesn't have a cramp?
I think it's just like if you try and actually think too hard about that, you're just going to stress yourself out.
Yeah,
there's no amazing.
The guys looking at the bench and they're like, "Get down, get down, get out," and then he just drops.
The obvious ones are incredibly obvious.
Oh, they're great,
comical.
Yeah.
Then you get your ones that seem fake but are probably legitimate, and then that's when you get in this weird spot. I don't know if I just don't think there's ever a way to really do it right.
I'd like to go on record that Tennessee was the team that was doing all the fake injuries in the Tennessee Ole Miss game, and
Lane Kiffin was the one that was mad about it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
dude,
yeah.
That game gets spun. That game gets spun so much by the people that wrote history, and I don't even understand why they got the chance to write history about that game, because Ole Miss won, but it was in Neyland. It was like the most amazing atmosphere ever, right? And I guess because it was in Tennessee, they got to craft the narrative that Ole Miss players were the ones falling down, which they were. But like, dude, so many Tennessee. The reason that game was 5.5 hours is because people on both teams were dropping left and right. Like, and I would like to think that it was more Tennessee.
What do you think about this? Let's say you have a fake injury, whatever. You either have to call a timeout. If you don't have any timeouts, you play the next play with 10 guys.
Dude, it popped in my head like a minute ago, but there's no way you could ever do that.
Power play scenario.
That comes down to the whole like, well, are you really going to penalize a team for actually getting hurt?
Yeah, that's the flip side. Like, if he is hurt, then
then you're becoming what you're promoting is like guys playing hurt.
Yeah,
which promotes worse injuries. Now, I think it's an amazing idea,
right?
Conceptually, but putting that in place is a little difficult.
Yeah, I feel like I think this in soccer, like I'm a big soccer fan, but like I think like if you get carried off the field, you're done. Like, you're not coming back on. If we had to stretcher you off the field, you're done. I don't care if you miraculously get the magic spray and you come back on the field. No, you're done. In this scenario, if they have to stop the game for you to get carried off, you're done. Your injury must be bad enough for you you couldn't even walk off the field. Like, I don't know. There's not a right answer. There's not a right answer because, like you said, like you don't want people playing hurt. You want to make the game safer. That was the whole point of speeding the game up, supposedly, right? Like, they want to prevent the hits and whatnot. But all right. So I think that's about it for the rule changes.
I got something. I was gonna surprise you guys with a player I want to ask about. Yes. Yeah. So there's a team that was near and dear to my heart when I worked at the College Football Hall of Fame, because The school name was ridiculous. The logo was cool, and their helmet was pretty visible on the helmet wall. If you've ever been to the College Football Hall of Fame, it's literally a giant wall of helmets for every single college football team. FBS, FCS, D2, D3, NAIA, and it was Incarnate Word. I loved talking about Incarnate Word because of the school. The logo was cool. So I ask you, because this player is like this huge name all of a sudden. He's transferred somewhere very relevant in a great spot, near and dear to Andrew's heart. Cameron Ward. How do we feel about him? Is he overhyped? Is he underhyped? I'm very curious because I don't have a lot of I don't know. I don't know personally.
The name Incarnate Word scares me. It just sounds terrifying. Like it sounds like it's got some like Carnage vibes to it, right? Like the Spider-Man villain, who's my favorite villain in like any of those things. But like it's kind of a scary name, I think. So I've always like shied away from looking too deeply into what they're doing over there. But I think I grabbed Ward in the 5th or 6th round. And I mean, you can connect the dots. You could draw the narrative so easily. His head coach, who ran a very effective air raid offense, is now the OC at Washington State. And he tore it up at Incarnate Word this past year, right? Like 4,500 yards in 12 games, not much on the ground, tons of touchdowns. He's proved that he can do it in the system. He's proved it that he's got a great bond, great vibes with this OC. So, I mean, we just saw something of the same.
I knew you were going to go there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the obvious conjecture, right? Just to kind of say, hey, this is the next WKU.
The problem with that is, what conference is WKU in?
Conference USAC.
The worst conference in college.
Right.
So that was going to be my point, was like, in many years, we have worried about guys transferring in from small schools to big schools that are in real conferences, and they've done nothing. And so I'm curious, like, is it the Western Kentucky effect, where you get the offensive coordinator with the quarterback and people just say it's going to work because of that?
Yeah, he'd be going much later if it weren't for Western Kentucky doing this.
But if we take away the offensive coordinator, like, Washington State's offense has to be very similar to like what he was already doing in a sense, right? Like, it's a pass-friendly offense. Isn't that in itself enough to be like, oh, this is pretty interesting?
I mean, me and you can think this way, right? Like, run, shoot, air raid, same thing. Like, it's just throwing the football around, right? I assume there's like lots of different nuances and stuff like that make the offenses very different. But I mean, you can make it's the kind of conjecture that you hear on Burning the Red Shirt, and for good reason. You're just slinging it around in the backyard.
Yeah. Well, the name that popped up in my head was Vernon Adams at Oregon. When he went from Eastern Washington to Oregon, we all thought, man, he's going to be just phenomenal because of his time at Eastern Washington. He was good, but it wasn't like...
Do you remember what happened after Vernon Adams at Oregon?
You mean Herbert?
Because this is the cautionary tale, right? So Vernon Adams, I would say overall it was like a positive experience for people, for fantasy owners and for Vernon in general. Like, dude, as fun as that Alamo Bowl game was, where Bram Cole, whatever his name is, the TCU guy, like leads them back after. But Vernon, the reason that happens is Vernon gets concussed. Someone else gets concussed too. I think like they lose the center and Vern on the same play. They're up like 28 points at halftime, and then TCU comes back, and it's an amazing story. But the following year, Dakota Pruitt transfers to Oregon from a Dakota, right? And it was like, oh, here we go, wheels up, same deal. Like, Vern just had success. Dakota was good at FCS. He's like, you're hearing all these things about his skill set. He could run, he could throw. It's going to be just plug and play. And the dude gets pulled for Herbert like week 4, right? And everyone, like, he went pretty high in drafts. Like,
Yeah. Hey,
So-
Montana State. I just looked it up real quick.
all right, nice. Dakota.
Same. No, they're all the same for sure. They're all the same. So I think
Well-
it's a good point. I mean, I don't know. It's hard. You look at his numbers; they're incredible, and like
Yeah.
some of these schools are are actually really good schools. Like Youngstown State is a very solid FCS team. He played great against Texas State. Damn, they beat Texas State. What were they doing? They played McNeese State twice in like a 3-week span. That's still college football. But like you got to worry about it, right? Like you're not throwing for 600 yards.
Yeah, like
You're
that's
just
why.
not.
That's why I brought like the Vernon Adams thing up. Like, although he was very good, it wasn't what he was doing there, and I think that's expected, right? You're not playing at the FCS level anymore. You're playing big boy football, if you will, right? Like,
Yeah. And two other things I would be very cautious about is one, he doesn't have like I know Stribling is cool and Donovan Ollie is a cool guy, right? But like, is that like that's your receiver group you're going into? It's not one that's going to be like
Maybe
I can
Rucker goes there.
maybe Rucker goes there. Yeah, exactly. Breaking news. It's not one that like makes up for mistakes from a guy, right? And the second thing that I would worry about is he's not a runner at all. So
Yeah.
like he better be he better do well passing. You know, like Malik Willis was a pretty average passer last year, but he ended top 10 because he ran the shit out of it.
I need a
So
moment of
you don't even have that.
moment of confession. Do you know he's not a runner because you've actually watched him, or do you know he's not a runner by his stats?
Dude, you run 77 times for 61 yards in college football and FCS. You're not a runner.
No, we talked about Bryce Young last night. Do you know how many rushing yards Bryce Young had last year?
Not a lot. The problem with college football is the sacks, right?
Right, but do you want to take?
He
probably
picked it up
had-
at the
he
end
had
of
less
the
than
year. I'm going to
100,
say
but-
280.
Yards?
Yeah.
He probably had 120 max.
Really?
0.
Yeah.
81 carries for 0 yards. The sacks eat into that. But
Yeah.
if you look at his stats, you're like, oh, he's not a runner, but he can run. Like it could
Yeah, but
not
if
be.
they're not going to let him run, you're 100% right, by the way. Great point. But if Washington State's not an offense to let their quarterback run, okay, and you have to be like Vernon Adams is a runner, right? And that offense is a running offense at Oregon, right? Like they want to move their quarterback. Washington State has been like your pocket passer type. And even if he does run a little bit, like
I just
they're
wanted
going
you
to
to
pass so many times. Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. That's what I get for
because I haven't
screwing a
either.
random.
I haven't either, so it's all good. But I was looking at his stats actually, and like what concerns me is like he has these great games, and then he has these games where he's like he threw 3 picks against McNeese State, then he threw 2 against Northwestern State. Like I think he just throws it up and
What
whatever.
kind of conference are they in where they're playing the same team twice all the time? They played McNeese State twice. They played Houston Baptist twice, Nichols twice. I mean, what are they?
So
what are they doing?
I have trivia for you.
Yeah.
There are 2 schools that play 13 games per the schedules right now. I think one is subject to change, which will give you a hint as to what that school will be, or which one of the schools would be. Because I think that their schedule ends up getting shifted around, and it probably doesn't end up being a 13 game schedule. And there might be more, but right, I'm confident that there are 2 teams that play 13 games.
Hawaii's got to be one, right? You do the old
Yes.
you get the bonus game for playing at Hawaii, right?
Mhm.
I don't know the other one.
New Mexico
So
State.
you know the other half of that rule, right? Hawaii can do the 13 game thing because they're Hawaii, but any team that does a non-conference game that is played at Hawaii can also do it. So WKU actually has 13 on the books right now. They do, but for us it's like whatever because they do a week 0.
Right.
They're I think they play week 0. Yeah, they have to. Otherwise, they wouldn't have 13. Do they open at Hawaii week 0? I forget. But yeah, they have 13 games on their schedule right now.
Interesting.
Yeah. Cameron Ward's a tricky beast.
Vandy plays
what happens, but
what
was that?
Week 0, it's Vandy at Hawaii.
But
so
why?
I don't know, but Vandy might have 13 games on the schedule.
Completely random. I remember.
I doubt it. SEC's not going to do that.
I tweeted somebody the other day that had said they had stashed.
I saw this. I saw this,
and I couldn't help it.
Running back,
the guy wasn't wrong. But I jokingly responded with, because he had responded to a transfer news about another running back going to Vandy, and I jokingly had said, like, hey, anytime you can grab a running back and a 4 RBBC, running back by committee at a team that's going to lose 7-8 games at the very least, you got to do it, right? And I just couldn't help it. I'm sorry. I just couldn't help it. I don't get many times to joke around, but that was a good one.
Yeah, I saw that. I remember you seeing that. I didn't chime in, but I definitely saw that.
You could have favored it. Made me feel better.
Did I not?
Let's act like you didn't.
I have 2 accounts to manage, so
you're really not doing much with the one. So
some things slip through the cracks now. No. Last thing I think you wanted to talk about, or I think we need you to elaborate a little bit on, is that little thing, the thing there behind you that's a phallus shaped.
Give me a second here.
Oh man.
So some context. I went to the Auburn basketball game on Saturday, which awesome experience. Like, I mean, college football is an amazing experience, but when you get a college basketball game that like is actually an important one at a big arena or a big team, it's pretty awesome. I don't know what they were thinking, but they handed out these. I'm just gonna flip it around to make it even worse. I don't know what they were thinking, but they gave them away, and I'm not getting rid of them because this is gold. The fun thing about it is, and I told you guys about this, but for the 34 people that follow us, you get to hear this story. 31 because we're 3 of the followers. I was wearing my home field shirt, my Flamingo shirt. And Flamingo, by the way, apparently the whole thing started weeks and weeks ago when I bought the shirt. Andrew, you were like, what is that? Like, why is that a thing?
It's a peacock, no?
Yeah, right. But like, why is that important? And I said, I have no idea, but it looks cool. So I'm going to buy it, of course, because I'm a college fan. And come to find out, we looked it up. Some beat writer made some comparison to Flamingo not backing down, and like, what they call the student section is the jungle at Auburn, and so it fits well, like Flamingo in a jungle, that fits well. So they embraced it, and they did like a peacock party T-shirt for all the student section. I was wearing my blue home field one. And the president of the school stopped my father-in-law and was like, because I got him one too, and was like, where'd you buy that shirt? So like, I feel like home field owes us at least a shirt each, because the president of Auburn University was asking about it and I promoted it to him. So I thought it was pretty interesting. The peacock shirts they were giving away were pretty lame, to be honest. Just a white one with like this blue basic ass figure. But yeah, so anytime you can.
This was going to be a clean podcast, but now I got to give it the explicit label.
Okay, my question is, was it clean this way, and then it became not clean this way?
Oh, no. So now I got to get the explicit tag.
Yeah, you got to throw the not safe for work on that one.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's great. Well, I think that's all we've got for tonight. Once again, on a Monday night, we did it. Next week, I will probably not be able to do next week. I'm flying back in next Monday night from Jacksonville. So
got a big recruiting trip?
Yeah, I got a special guest I'm trying to get on the
Lock
pod.
in.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Trevor Lawrence, but I may not get him. We'll see.
Get Urban.
By the way, what's up with CFB Wordle trying to push the Urban Meyer on us so hard these days?
Yeah.
Meyer, and they're running out of 5-letter words is what they're doing.
Right.
I know Andrew doesn't do the CFB version. Maybe doesn't do any of the
I don't
Wordle.
think he does any of them.
No, I unsubscribe.
Have you done the today one yet? Because I haven't.
I think it was Urban, wasn't it?
I thought that was yesterday.
Let me look real quick. Well, we don't need to waste our time doing this, but yeah.
No, sure we do. Do you guess the same first word every time? Because I do.
What is your first word?
Gator.
That's a good one.
Because one of these days it's gonna be Gator, and I'm gonna get it on the first.
I do. I'm an idiot, and I do like verbs and stuff. So like, because it is never going to be a verb, right? But like, I do punts usually.
Oh yeah.
P-U-N-T-S.
Well, throw was one, right?
That's true. Yeah.
But I stick with Gator, and it's rarely like one letter is in it, and that was like, oh, okay, well that's a waste. But one of these days it's going to be the word, and I'm going to have it on the first guess.
Looks like a genius.
Exactly, and I'm going to share it, and Andrew's going to not like it. So, but all right, that's all we've got for today. I'm not sure about next week, but we'll figure something out.
We'll figure out a date. Yeah,
we'll figure it out.
I mean, honestly, this one was above average, so it could probably span 2 weeks.
Yeah, people
of relevance.
can stew on this one for a couple weeks and really think about what we said. But that's all we've got. Until next week. Until next time. Later, guys.